What does it feel like to have every eye in the room burn into you, branding you a liar before you can even speak? For Amara Wilson, 16 and unyielding, that moment came like a thunderclap in the middle of third period. The classroom smelled of chalk dust and nervous sweat, and the hum of fluorescent lights seemed to scream as Mrs. Hargrove, her algebra teacher, slapped Amara's test onto her desk. The red ink scrawled across the top read, 92%, suspected cheating. Amara's heart thudded, not with guilt but with fury. She'd spent nights hunched over her desk, her mother's old lamp casting shadows across equations she wrestled into submission. She'd earned that grade, every point of it. And now this? Her classmates' whispers slithered through the air, their glances sharp as knives. Mrs. Hargrove's voice cut through. Amara, explain how someone like you scored higher than anyone else in this class. The words hung heavy, laced with an accusation that went beyond the test. Someone like you. Amara's jaw tightened, her brown eyes locking onto the teacher's. She didn't flinch. She wouldn't. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as 20 pairs of eyes pinned her in place. Amara was used to standing out. Her skin, her braids, her quiet confidence made her a target in this mostly white suburban high school. But this was different. This wasn't just a challenge. It was a public execution of her character. Mrs. Hargrove stood tall, her arms crossed, her thin lips pressed into a line that dared Amara to fight back. The teacher had taught at Lincoln High for 20 years, her reputation as unyielding as the concrete walls around them. To her, Amara's perfect test was an anomaly, a glitch in the system that needed correcting. I didn't cheat, Amara said, her voice steady but sharp, like a blade slicing through the tension. I studied. I worked. That's my grade. Mrs. Hargrove's eyebrow arched, skepticism dripping from her like venom. Then you'll have no problem proving it, she said, pointing to the board. Solve problem 17.
Right now.
In front of everyone. Amara's stomach twisted, not from fear but from the weight of what this moment meant. If she faltered, they'd all believe the lie. If she succeeded, they'd still whisper. She stood, her chair scraping against the linoleum floor, and walked to the board. The marker shook slightly in her hand, not from nerves, but from the anger pulsing through her veins. She began to write, her strokes deliberate, each number a defiance of the doubts suffocating the room. The quadratic equation unfolded under her hand, her mind racing through the steps she'd memorized under that flickering lamp. She could feel the eyes, the judgment, the weight of being the only black girl in a room that had already decided her guilt. As she worked, memories flashed, her mother, a nurse working double shifts, telling her education was her ticket out, her shield against a world that would try to break her. Amara had taken those words to heart, carrying them like armor. She finished the problem, stepping back as the board revealed her flawless solution. A murmur rippled through the class, but Mrs. Hargrove's face didn't soften. Lucky guess, she said, her voice cold. Try another. Amara's grip on the marker tightened. This wasn't about math anymore. It was about proving she belonged, that she wasn't the stereotype they wanted her to be. She turned back to the board, ready to fight. The bell rang, slicing through the moment like a guillotine. Mrs. Hargrove waved her hand dismissively. We'll continue this tomorrow, Amara. Don't think this is over. Amara returned to her seat, her heart pounding but her head high. She felt the stares, heard the whispers, some curious, some cruel. As she packed her bag, her best friend, Lila, slipped her a note. You got this. Don't let her win. Amara nodded, but inside, a storm was brewing. She wasn't just fighting for her grade, she was fighting for her truth. And she wouldn't let it end here. That night, Amara sat at her desk, the lamp casting its familiar glow. She didn't open her textbook. Instead, she pulled out her notebook and began to write, not equations, but a plan. If Mrs. Hargrove wanted proof, Amara would give her more than she could handle. She'd spent years being underestimated, her intelligence questioned, her presence scrutinized. This wasn't new, but it was the last straw. She thought of her mother, who'd faced worse and still stood tall. Amara would do the same. She'd turn their doubt into silence, their accusations into awe. By midnight, her notebook was filled with ideas, not just to defend herself, but to expose the deeper issue. Mrs. Hargrove wasn't just accusing her of cheating, she was accusing her of being less than she was. Amara's pen moved faster, her resolve hardening. She'd show them all, not just with math but with something bigger. Something undeniable. The next morning, Amara walked into Lincoln High with a fire in her chest. The hallways buzzed with gossip, the story of her confrontation with Mrs. Hargrove spreading like wildfire. She caught snippets of it, her name, the word cheating, the skepticism that clung to her like a shadow. Lila met her at her locker, her eyes wide with worry. "They're saying you stole the answer key," she whispered. Amara's jaw clenched. The rumor wasn't just wrong, it was vicious, a lie that painted her as a criminal. She slammed her locker shut, the sound echoing down the hall.
"Let them talk," she said.
"I'm ready." Lila grabbed her arm, her voice low. "Amara, what are you planning? You can't just go after Hargrove. She's untouchable." Amara's smile was sharp, almost dangerous. "Not anymore." In algebra class, the air was thick with anticipation. Mrs. Hargrove stood at the front, her arms crossed, a new test in her hand. "Since you're so confident, Amara, you'll take this one. Alone. No notes, no help." The class went silent, every student leaning forward, waiting for her to crack. Amara didn't hesitate. She took the test, her pencil moving with the precision of a surgeon. Each problem was a battle, each answer a strike against the doubt that hung over her. She finished early, slid the paper across Mrs. Hargrove's desk, and sat back, her gaze unflinching. The teacher's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing, collecting the test with a look that promised scrutiny. After class, Amara didn't go to lunch. She headed to the library, where she'd arranged to meet Mr. Daniels, the school's only black teacher. He taught history, but more than that, he was a mentor, someone who'd seen the same battles Amara was fighting. His office was a small haven, filled with books and posters of civil rights leaders. "I heard what happened," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to do this alone." Amara shook her head. "I want to. I need to." She handed him her notebook, pages filled with her plan. Not just to prove her innocence, but to challenge the system that let this happen. Mr. Daniels read in silence, his expression shifting from concern to admiration.
"This is bold, Amara."
Risky but bold. Her plan was simple but audacious, a public demonstration of her knowledge, not just in math but across subjects, in front of the whole school. She'd challenged Mrs. Hargrove to test her live, no preparation, no tricks. But there was more, a petition to address bias in the classroom, backed by data she'd been collecting since freshman year. Notes on every time a teacher overlooked her raised hand, every subtle comment that stung. Mr. Daniels leaned back, his fingers steepled. "You're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for every kid who's been doubted like this." Amara nodded, her throat tight. "I know." That afternoon, a twist shook her resolve. Lila pulled her aside, her face pale. "Someone saw you in the library last week, near the teacher's lounge. They're saying you were sneaking around, looking for test answers." Amara's heart sank. It was a lie. She'd been in the library studying, same as always, but the rumor was spreading, fueled by a classmate named Ethan, who'd never hidden his resentment of her. Ethan was the class star, the one Mrs. Hargrove praised, the one whose 90% on the test hadn't been questioned. The accusation stung, not because it was true, but because it was believable to those who already saw her as an outsider. Amara's hands shook as she processed it. For a moment, doubt crept in, not at herself, but in whether anyone would listen. She could see the narrative forming. The black girl who cheated, who lied, who didn't belong. But then she thought of her mother, who'd faced worse lies and still walked with her head high. Amara straightened, her resolve steeling. She wouldn't just defend herself. She'd turn their lies into her weapon. By the end of the day, she drafted a letter to the principal, requesting a public forum. She didn't ask for permission, she demanded it, citing school policy on fairness and her right to clear her name. She attached her petition, signed by Lila, Mr. Daniels, and a handful of others who'd seen the truth. As she hit send, her heart raced, not with fear but with purpose. This was her counterattack, her way of taking back the narrative. Mrs. Hargrove thought she could break her. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The school buzzed with tension as Amara's letter spread like wildfire. By the next morning, whispers followed her through the halls, some supportive, most skeptical. The principal, Mr. Larson, called her into his office. He was a wiry man with tired eyes, caught between policy and politics. "Amara, this is serious," he said, holding her letter. "A public forum? That's unprecedented." Amara sat across from him, her posture rigid. "So is accusing me without proof," she replied. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with conviction. Mr. Larson sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mrs. Hargrove's been here a long time. She's respected. You're sure you want to take this on?" Amara leaned forward. "I'm not just taking her on. I'm taking on the idea that someone like me can't be this good." He agreed to the forum, set for Friday in the auditorium. The news spread fast, and by lunch, Ethan was at the center of a crowd, spinning his story about seeing Amara near the teacher's lounge. His voice carried, smug and certain, as he painted her as a thief. Lila grabbed Amara's arm, pulling her away. "He's lying, and everyone's eating it up," she hissed. Amara's chest tightened, but she forced a smile. "Let him talk. It'll make Friday sweeter." Inside, though, the weight of Ethan's lie pressed against her. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every kid who'd been dismissed, doubted, or erased. She spent the next 2 days preparing, not just for the math test but for the bigger fight. She met with Mr. Daniels after school, rehearsing answers to every possible question Mrs. Hargrove might throw at her. He pushed her hard, quizzing her on calculus, literature, history, subjects she hadn't been accused in but needed to master to prove her point. "You're not just showing them you're smart," he said. "You're showing them you're undeniable." Amara nodded, her notebook now a battle plan, filled with facts, stats, and stories of bias she'd collected. She wasn't just fighting for her grade, she was fighting for her place. Thursday night brought the twist that nearly broke her. Her mother, exhausted from a double shift, found Amara at her desk, surrounded by books. "Baby, why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice soft but heavy with worry. Amara froze. She'd kept the accusation from her mother, not wanting to add to her burden. But someone, maybe Lila, maybe a teacher, had let it slip. Her mother sat beside her, her hands calloused from years of work. "You don't have to fight every battle alone," she said. Tears stung Amara's eyes, not from sadness, but from the weight of love and expectation. "I'm not alone," she whispered. "I'm doing this for us." Her mother hugged her, and in that moment, Amara felt both fragile and invincible. Friday morning, the auditorium was packed. Students, teachers, even parents filled the seats, their murmurs a low roar. Amara stood backstage, her heart pounding but her resolve ironclad. Mr. Daniels gave her a nod, his eyes saying what words couldn't. Lila squeezed her hand, whispering, "You're a warrior." Mrs. Hargrove stood at the podium, her face a mask of confidence, a new test in her hand. Ethan sat in the front row, his smirk visible even from backstage. The principal introduced the forum, his voice neutral, but the tension was palpable. This wasn't just about a test anymore, it was a reckoning. As Amara stepped onto the stage, the room hushed. She wore her favorite blue sweater, her braids pulled back, her chin high. Mrs. Hargrove handed her the test, her voice clipped. "No tricks, Amara. Solve these and we'll see." Amara took the paper, her hands steady. The problems were brutal, college level, designed to trip her up. She walked to the projector, where her work would be displayed for all to see. The first problem flashed on the screen, and she began, her marker moving with precision. The room watched, breathless, as she unraveled each equation, her logic flawless, her confidence unshakable. Halfway through, Ethan stood, his voice cutting through the silence. She could have memorized these too. The crowd murmured, doubt creeping in. Amara's heart raced, but she didn't falter. She turned to Mrs. Hargrove, her voice clear. Give me a new problem.
Right now.
Make it up. The teacher's eyes widened, but she nodded, scribbling a complex equation on a note card. Amara took it, her mind racing. This was the moment, her truth against their lies. The auditorium felt like a pressure cooker, every breath heavy with anticipation. Amara held the note card, Mrs. Hargrove's hastily written equation glaring at her. A multivariable calculus problem, the kind most seniors wouldn't touch. She could feel Ethan's smirk, the crowd's doubt, the weight of her mother's pride watching from the back row. Her marker hovered over the projector sheet, then moved, deliberate and sure. She broke the problem down, step by step, her voice steady as she explained each move. The numbers danced under her hand, variables aligning like soldiers in her defense. The room was silent, save for the faint squeak of the marker and the occasional gasp from a student who understood what they were witnessing. Mrs. Hargrove's face twitched, her confidence cracking as Amara's solution took shape. The final answer, clean and correct, glowed on the screen. A ripple of whispers spread, then applause. Tentative at first, then louder. Amara didn't smile. She turned to Mrs. Hargrove, her voice calm but cutting. Another one? The teacher hesitated, her lips parting, but no words came. The principal stepped forward, his voice tight. That's enough, Amara. You've made your point. But Amara wasn't done. She pulled her notebook from her bag, her petition tucked inside. This isn't just about me, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. This is about every kid who's been told they don't belong, who's been accused because they don't fit someone's idea of who can succeed. She held up her petition, pages filled with stories, not just hers, but others. Students who'd been ignored, dismissed, or punished for daring to shine. She read one aloud, her voice trembling with emotion but never breaking. It was Lila's story, about the time a teacher assumed she couldn't afford a field trip and publicly humiliated her. The crowd shifted, uncomfortable but riveted. Amara's eyes found Ethan's, his smirk gone, his face pale. You can lie about me, she said, not looking away. But you can't lie about this. She handed the petition to Mr. Larson, who took it with a look of stunned respect. Mrs. Hargrove's voice broke the silence, sharp and defensive. This is inappropriate, Amara. You're turning this into a spectacle. Amara faced her, unflinching. You made it a spectacle when you accused me in front of everyone. The room erupted, some cheering, some shouting, the tension boiling over. Mr. Daniel stood, his presence calming the chaos. Let her speak, he said, his voice a quiet command. Amara continued, her words a blend of fire and reason, laying bare the bias she'd faced, the assumptions that had tried to define her. The twist came when Ethan stood again, his voice softer this time, almost broken. I lied, he said, the words barely audible. The room froze. I didn't see her near the lounge. I was jealous. The admission hung in the air, a confession that shifted the narrative. Amara's heart pounded, not with triumph, but with a strange mix of relief and pity. Ethan had been her rival, but he was also a kid, caught in the same system that pitted them against each other. She nodded, acknowledging his truth, but didn't soften her stance. This wasn't about him, it was about something bigger. Mrs. Hargrove's face flushed red, her authority crumbling. She opened her mouth to protest, but Mr. Larson raised a hand. We'll review this, Amara. All of it. The forum ended in a blur, students buzzing, teachers whispering, parents divided. Amara walked off the stage, her mother waiting for her. They didn't speak, just hugged, the weight of the moment shared in silence. That night, Amara sat at her desk, her lamp casting its familiar glow. She didn't feel victorious, not yet. The petition was just the start, a spark that could ignite change or fizzle out. She wrote in her notebook, not a plan this time, but a reflection. She wrote about her mother, about Mr. Daniels, about the kids who'd come up to her after the forum, sharing their own stories. She wrote about Ethan's confession, how it didn't erase the hurt but gave her hope that truth could break through. As she closed her notebook, her phone buzzed. A text from Lila. "You changed everything today." Amara smiled, her first real smile in days. The fight wasn't over, but she'd struck a blow. And she was just getting started. The days after the forum felt like walking through a storm. The school was a battlefield of opinions. Some students hailed Amara as a hero. Others whispered she'd gone too far. Teachers avoided her eyes in the halls, their silence louder than words. Mrs. Hargrove hadn't been in class since Friday, replaced by a substitute who handed out worksheets and avoided questions. Amara heard rumors of an investigation, of meetings behind closed doors. She kept her head high, but the weight of being the center of it all pressed against her. Every step felt like a test, every glance a judgment. At home, her mother was her anchor. Over dinner, she shared stories of her own fights, against bosses who underestimated her, co-workers who whispered behind her back. "You're stronger than I was at your age," she said, her eyes shining with pride. Amara shook her head. "I'm just tired of being quiet." Her mother reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "That's what makes you strong." Those words carried Amara through the uncertainty, through the waiting. By Wednesday, the school announced a decision. Mr. Larson called Amara and her mother into his office, Mrs. Hargrove seated across from them, her face a mask of forced composure. The principal's voice was measured. "After reviewing the evidence, including Amara's performance and the petition, we've found no proof of cheating." Amara's heart lifted, but she stayed silent, sensing more. "However," he continued, "Mrs. Hargrove's actions were based on a misunderstanding. She'll be taking a leave to attend sensitivity training." Mrs. Hargrove's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Amara wanted to feel triumphant, but the victory felt hollow. A leave wasn't accountability. It was a pause, a way to smooth things over, without real change. She spoke up, her voice steady. "What about the petition? What about the other kids?" Mr. Larson hesitated, caught off guard. "We're reviewing it," he said. "We'll form a committee to address bias in the classroom." Amara nodded, but her eyes were sharp. She'd heard promises before. She'd make sure they followed through. As they left the office, Mrs. Hargrove stood, her voice low. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Amara." The words sounded sincere, but they didn't erase the sting of that first accusation. Amara met her gaze. "I know, but you did." She walked away, her mother's hand on her shoulder, a quiet strength passing between them. The fallout spread beyond the school. Local news picked up the story, framing it as a battle against systemic bias. Amara's phone buzzed with messages, support from strangers, criticism from others. A reporter asked for an interview, but she declined. This wasn't about fame. It was about truth. Still, the attention brought allies. A community organizer reached out, offering to help turn her petition into a district-wide initiative. Mr. Daniels connected her with a lawyer who specialized in education reform. Amara felt the ground shifting, her fight growing bigger than she'd imagined. But the cost was real. Friends drifted, uncomfortable with her new visibility. Ethan avoided her, his confession a wound he couldn't face. Even Lila seemed quieter, overwhelmed by the spotlight on her friend. Amara felt the loneliness creep in, but she pushed it back. She'd chosen this path, and she wouldn't turn back. At night, she wrote in her notebook, not just about the fight, but about the future. She dreamed of a school where no one had to prove they belonged, where brilliance wasn't questioned because of skin or status. By the end of the week, Amara stood before a small group of students in the library, her petition now a movement. They called themselves the Truth Collective, a mix of kids from different grades, different backgrounds, all tired of being unseen. Amara spoke, her voice steady but warm. This isn't about me anymore. It's about us. We're going to make them listen. The room buzzed with energy, with hope. She looked at their faces, Lila's, bright with pride, a shy freshman who'd shared her own story. Even Ethan, lingering at the back, his head bowed but present. Amara knew the road ahead would be hard. Change didn't come easy, and the system was bigger than one teacher, one school. But as she closed her notebook that night, her lamp casting its familiar glow, she felt something new, not just strength, but purpose. She was rewriting the story, not just hers, but everyone's. The Truth Collective grew faster than Amara expected. By the next month, their meetings filled the library, students spilling into the halls with ideas and stories. They weren't just talking, they were planning. Workshops on recognizing bias, training sessions with Mr. Daniels on how to speak up, even a website to share their experiences anonymously. Amara was their spark, but she insisted it wasn't her show. This is ours, she told them, her voice firm but inclusive. She saw herself in their eyes, kids who'd been doubted, dismissed, or silenced. Together, they were loud, undeniable. The school administration watched warily. Mr. Larson attended a meeting, his presence awkward but necessary. "We're listening," he said, but Amara pressed him. "Listening's not enough. What's changing?" He promised new teacher training, a review of grading policies, but his words felt like placeholders. Amara didn't trust promises. She trusted action. She and the collective drafted a list of demands: mandatory bias training, a student-led oversight board, and a public apology from Mrs. Hargrove. They presented it at a school board meeting, Amara's voice steady as she faced a room of adults who looked both impressed and uncomfortable. Mrs. Hargrove's leave ended, and she returned to Lincoln High, quieter, her authority diminished. She avoided Amara, but the tension lingered. One day, in the hallway, their eyes met. Amara expected anger, but Mrs. Hargrove's face held something else: regret, maybe, or shame. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Amara nodded, but didn't reply. Apologies didn't erase the damage, but they were a start. She walked away, her focus on the bigger fight. The twist came when Ethan approached her after a collective meeting. He'd been coming regularly, sitting in the back, silent but present. "I want to help," he said, his voice shaky. Amara studied him, searching for the smug kid who'd lied about her. He looked different now, smaller, like the weight of his actions had finally hit. "Why?" she asked, her tone neutral. He swallowed hard. "Because I was wrong. And because I see it now, what you're fighting for." Amara didn't trust him, not fully, but she saw something real in his eyes.
"Prove it," she said.
He nodded, and over the next weeks, he did, showing up, listening, amplifying the collective's work. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was a step. The collective's work started to ripple. Other schools in the district reached out, inspired to start their own groups. A local newspaper ran a feature on Amara, calling her the voice of a generation. She hated the spotlight, but it brought attention to their cause. Her mother framed the article, hanging it in their living room. "This is you, baby," she said, her voice thick with pride. Amara smiled, but her mind was on the next steps: a district-wide summit, a push for policy change. The fight was growing, and she was ready. But growth brought challenges. Some students left the collective, frustrated by the slow pace of change. Others clashed over priorities. Some wanted to focus on teachers, others on curriculum or discipline. Amara mediated, her patience tested but unwavering. She leaned on Lila, who'd become her co-leader, and Mr. Daniels, whose quiet wisdom kept them grounded. Late nights, she'd sit under her lamp, writing speeches, planning meetings, her notebook now a chronicle of a movement. One evening, a freshman named Maya approached her, nervous but determined. "I want to speak at the summit," she said, "about how they assumed I couldn't read well because I'm dyslexic." Amara saw herself in Maya's eyes, the same fire, the same need to be seen. "You will," she promised. As Maya walked away, Amara felt the weight of her role. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was carrying others' stories, their hopes. The summit was set for spring, a chance to bring their demands to the district. Amara knew it wouldn't solve everything, but it was a platform, a moment to make the system listen. As she closed her notebook that night, her lamp flickering, she felt the fire in her chest burn brighter. This was her purpose, her fight, and she was just getting started. Spring arrived, and with it, the district summit. The auditorium was packed, not just with students, but parents, teachers, and district officials, their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Amara stood backstage, her palms sweaty, but her resolve ironclad. The Truth Collective had spent months preparing, their demands polished, their stories ready. Maya stood beside her, clutching a note card with her speech, her eyes wide but fierce. Lila was there too, her smile a quiet reassurance. Mr. Daniels gave Amara a nod, his presence a reminder of how far they'd come. When Amara took the stage, the room hushed. She didn't need notes. Her words came from a place deeper than paper. "This isn't about one test or one teacher," she began, her voice clear and strong. "It's about a system that decides who gets to succeed before we even try." She spoke of her own fight, of Maya's, of the countless stories in the collective's petition. She didn't accuse, she illuminated, her words painting a picture of a school where every kid could shine. The crowd listened, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Maya spoke next, her voice trembling at first, but growing steadier. She told her story of being underestimated, of fighting to be seen as more than her dyslexia. The room was silent, then erupted in applause. Ethan followed, his voice quiet but honest, admitting his role in Amara's accusation and his journey to understand why. His words weren't polished, but they were real, and they hit hard. One by one, collective members shared their truths, each story a thread in a tapestry of change. The district superintendent promised action, new policies, training, a student advisory board. Amara didn't trust promises, but she saw the shift in the room, the way people leaned forward, the way eyes met hers with respect. After the summit, students from other schools approached her, inspired to start their own collectives. Parents thanked her, some with tears in their eyes. Even Mrs. Hargrove, standing at the back, gave a small nod. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. That night, Amara sat at her desk, her lamp casting its familiar glow. Her notebook was open, but she didn't write. Instead, she thought of her mother, working late to give her a chance, of Mr. Daniels who'd believed in her, of Maya, who'd found her voice. She thought of Ethan, who'd learned to listen, and of the kids who'd carry this fight forward. The road ahead was long. Systems didn't change overnight, but she'd lit a spark, and it was spreading. She stood, turning off the lamp, the room falling into a soft darkness. She didn't need its light anymore. The fire inside her was enough. She'd faced doubt, lies, and a system that tried to break her, and she'd come out stronger. She wasn't just Amara Wilson, the girl accused of cheating. She was Amara, the voice that silenced a school, the spark that started a movement. And she was just getting started.